"Stop singing," cried the millionaire in tears. The poor little girl only wanted to save her mother. If this story has caught your interest, please subscribe to our channel and let us know which city you're watching from. Let's begin. The morning dawned rainy in downtown New Orleans, as if the sky itself carried the weight of the anxieties haunting that vibrant, unequal city. Amidst the wet sidewalks and the hurried rush of people going about their day, a 7-year-old girl balanced on a cardboard box in front of a closed newsstand. Her clothes were soaked, her hair stuck to her forehead, and the old guitar in her hand seemed as big as she was. Still, her voice cut through the noise of cars and footsteps with a sweetness and sorrow that seemed to belong to someone much older. Lily Martin sang with her heart exposed. Every note that left her mouth carried a silent cry for help. Passers-by left coins. Some stopped, but few truly listened. What no one knew was that behind that childish voice was an urgent reason. Her mother, Camilla, was sick. It wasn't a simple cold or a bad headache. It was a diagnosis that had come too late, with words that were painful even to repeat: advanced stage cancer. And Camilla, though weak, insisted on smiling at her daughter and saying everything would be fine, even when her body screamed otherwise. The rain began to thicken, and Lily tucked the few coins she had collected into the torn pocket of her dress. $37. It wasn't enough. It never was. But she smiled anyway, because she needed to believe that every cent brought her a little closer to saving her mother. When the storm grew too strong, she packed up her small improvised stage. The guitar was carefully placed in its worn-out case, protected by a piece of plastic she had found on the street days before. It was her most precious possession, a gift from Camilla from a time when she could still work and dream. The journey home was long. Through narrow alleys and slippery slopes, the girl walked with determination, stopping only to catch her breath or when the rain became unbearable. The Bywater, where they lived, was a considerable distance from the commercial center, but she was used to it. It was where she received the most donations. Upon reaching the housing complex, she climbed the 4 flights of stairs with the weight of the guitar on her back. The elevator had broken months ago, and no one bothered to fix it. In the dimly lit hallway, she stopped in front of apartment 407 and took a deep breath. She didn't want her mother to notice her exhaustion. "Mom, I'm home," she announced, forcing cheerfulness into her voice as she pushed open the door that didn't lock properly. The small apartment had only 2 rooms besides the bathroom, a living room that doubled as a kitchen and the bedroom they shared. The smell of medicine mixed with sautéed onions filled the air. On the only bed in the place, Camilla Martin tried to sit up, but the effort made her groan in pain. "Stay down, Mom," Lily pleaded, rushing to help her. "Did you take your medicine for today?" Camilla nodded weakly. At 34, her body seemed to have aged decades. Her once thick, shiny hair was now thinning. Deep, dark circles stood out against her pale skin. But her eyes, they still held the sparkle Lily had inherited. Intense, brown and full of life, even when everything indicated the contrary. "How was it today, my star?" Camilla asked, stroking her daughter's wet hair. "It was good," Lily lied. "I made a little more than yesterday." She took the coins from her pocket and placed them on the makeshift table beside the bed. Camilla didn't need to know it was getting harder, that people didn't stop as often as before, that her feet ached from standing so long. "Mrs. Josephine from the bakery gave me 2-day-old roll," the girl continued, pulling the paper-wrapped bread from her worn backpack. "And Mr. Anthony from the corner store put some more medicine on our tab, said we can pay when we can." What Lily didn't mention was that Mr. Anthony had said, with a sorrowful look, that he couldn't wait much longer for payment on their previous debts, or that Mrs. Josephine had only given her the bread because she had seen her rummaging through the dumpster behind the shop. Camilla tried to smile, but a wave of pain made her shut her eyes tightly. Lily knew that expression. She ran to the kitchen cabinet, grabbed one of the few remaining painkillers and a glass of water. "Take this." "Mom, it'll get better," she whispered, helping Camilla swallow the pill. While she waited for the medicine to take effect, Lily prepared a broth with the few vegetables they had in the fridge. She had learned to cook by watching her mother before the illness took hold. Now at 7, she managed the house like an adult. Mrs. Irene, the neighbor from 408, knocked on the door as Lily was finishing the meal. "Came to see how you two are doing," the gray-haired lady said, walking in without ceremony. In her hands, a plate covered with an embroidered napkin gave off a delicious smell of bean stew. I made a little extra today. Thought you might like some. That's how it worked in the New Horizon building. Amidst poverty and hardship, there was an invisible support network, woven by people who had little but shared what they could. Mrs. Irene was a retired, widowed teacher who had lived alone for 10 years. Since Camilla had fallen ill, the lady had become a sort of grandmother to Lily. "How is she today?" she asked softly, helping the girl serve the broth. "The same," Lily replied, but her eyes told a different story. The same meant bad. The same meant the medication wasn't as effective anymore. The same meant time was passing far too quickly. After Mrs. Irene left, promising to return the next day with more food, Lily brought a tray to her mother. Camilla ate little, more to please her daughter than out of appetite. When she finished, she asked Lily to get the guitar. "Play a little for me, honey. That song I taught you. It was a ritual between them." Lily picked up the instrument, tuning it carefully. The guitar had been Camilla's companion for years. As a young woman, she had dreamed of being a professional singer. She had even performed in bars in New Orleans, but an unexpected pregnancy and a lack of opportunities made her abandon the dream. The girl began to strum the strings, creating a soft melody. Then her voice filled the small room. It was a song about hope, about better days to come, about a love that would never fade. Camilla closed her eyes, letting the music transport her to a time when her body didn't ache, when the future still seemed possible. When the song ended, Camilla was asleep. Lily covered her carefully and went to wash the dishes. In the tiny living room, she looked at the cracks in the wall, the worn-out furniture, the bills piled on the table. Even as a child, she fully understood the gravity of the situation. The disability checks they received didn't cover even half of the expenses for medicine and appointments. The side jobs Camilla used to do from home, like sewing and crafts, were no longer possible, as she no longer had the strength. Through the window, Lily saw the rain subside. A timid rainbow formed over the grey buildings. Maybe it was a sign, she thought. Maybe tomorrow would be better. The next morning the rain had let up, but the sky remained overcast, threatening to break at any moment. Lily woke up early, prepared some tea for Camilla, and left her medicine on the bedside table. Her mother was still sleeping, her face marked by exhaustion. "I'm going out for a bit, Mom," she whispered in Camilla's ear, knowing she probably wouldn't hear. "Mrs. Irene will stop by to check on you. I'll be back before lunch." She grabbed her guitar, put on the only jacket she had, 2 sizes too big, a donation from a teacher at the school she attended when she could, and left. The plan was to go to City Park, where there was usually more foot traffic on Saturdays. On the way, she passed Mr. Gerald's pharmacy, where Camilla bought basic medicines when they had money. The pharmacist, a man of almost 70 who knew everyone in the neighborhood, waved to her through the window. "Good morning, little one," he greeted as she entered the shop. "Does your mother need anything?" Lily shook her head, embarrassed. What she needed was precisely what they couldn't afford. The more expensive drugs, the specialized consultations, the tests that the public health system took months to schedule. "I just came to see if you had any messages from the doctor," she lied. In truth, she stopped by every day to see if Mr. Gerald needed any help in the store, something for which she could earn a few dollars. "Not today, dear. But I have some news that might interest you." Mr. Gerald pulled a colorful flyer from under the counter. It was an ad for a talent show coming to New Orleans the following week. "Stars of Tomorrow" was written in large letters at the top. "I thought of you when I saw this. They're looking for young talent, and the prize for the winner is $100,000. Lily took the paper with trembling hands. $100,000. It was more money than she could earn in years of singing on the streets. "Registration ends tomorrow," the pharmacist continued. "It's at Waller TV right here in downtown. I'd take you, but I have to watch the pharmacy. Maybe Mr. Joe, the taxi driver, could give you a ride." Lily's mind raced. $100,000 would mean the best doctors for her mother, the most effective medications, maybe even a trip to Houston, where they said there were advanced treatments that the public system in New Orleans didn't offer. "Thank you, Mr. Gerald," she exclaimed, clutching the paper to her chest. "I'm definitely going to sign up." The pharmacist smiled, moved by the determination of this child who carried responsibilities, far too great for her age. Here, he said, holding out a $20 bill. For the taxi. And don't tell your mum I gave it to you, she's too proud. Lily thanked him and ran towards the taxi stand. Mr. Joe was there reading the newspaper while waiting for customers. He was a middle-aged man with a thick mustache and kind eyes. He also knew Camilla and Lily's story, like almost everyone in the community. To Walla TV? Of course I'll take you, Princess, he said after hearing the girl's request. And you don't have to pay. Consider it my contribution to the future star of the neighborhood. The ride to the station took about 20 minutes. Lily spent the entire trip mentally rehearsing the song she would perform, the same one she sang for her mother, the one Camilla had composed years ago and taught her with so much love. Walla TV was located in a modern building in the Garden District. Lily had never been in such an imposing place. In the reception area, several people were waiting for their turn to register for the show. Children with their parents, nervous teenagers, adults of all ages, all sharing the same dream. Full name? The receptionist asked when it was finally her turn. Lily Martin, she replied, trying to sound older than she was. Age? 7. The receptionist looked up from the form, surprised. Where are your parents or guardian? Minors need authorization. Lily's heart sank. She hadn't thought of that. How could she explain that her mother could barely get out of bed? That there was no father? That she was there alone because she desperately needed that money? My mother. She couldn't come today, she began, her voice faltering. The receptionist seemed about to dismiss her when an elegant woman approached the counter. It was Beatrice Caldwell, the show's producer, who had overheard part of the conversation. What's your talent, dear? She asked with a warm smile. I sing and play the guitar, Lily replied, pointing to the instrument on her back. And where did you learn? From my mom. She taught me everything I know. Something in the determined gaze of that child deeply touched Beatrice. In her years in television, she had developed a sixth sense for recognizing genuine talent. Let's do this, she said, grabbing a special form. I'm going to give you a provisional authorization. Your mother needs to sign it, and you must bring it on the day of the audition. Without it, you can't participate. Understand? Lily nodded, hope rekindling within her. She received the registration form and the authorization slip, promising to return with everything signed. The auditions start next Tuesday, Beatrice explained. You'll receive a text with your specific time. We don't have a phone, Lily admitted, embarrassed. Beatrice thought for a moment. Do you have a neighbor or a friend whose number we can use? Lily remembered Mrs. Irene, who had an old but functional cell phone. Yes, my neighbor. She wrote down Mrs. Irene's number on the form and thanked Beatrice for her understanding. As she left the station, she felt a mix of anxiety and hope. Now she had to convince her mother to sign the authorization, and that might be harder than she imagined. When she returned to the apartment, she found Camilla sitting up in bed with Mrs. Irene by her side. The neighbor had brought chicken broth and helped Camilla take a bath, something that had become increasingly difficult without assistance. Where were you, honey? Camilla asked, a look of concern on her face. Mrs. Irene said you left early with your guitar. Lily hesitated. Should she tell her about the talent show now, or wait until her mother felt a little better? She decided on the truth. Time was too short to wait. Mom, I found out something incredible, she began, pulling the folded flyer from her pocket. It's a talent show on TV. The prize is $100,000 for the winner. I signed up. Camilla took the paper with trembling hands. Her eyes scanned the ad, lingering on the prize amount. Then she looked at her daughter with a mixture of pride and sadness. Lily, there will be so many people competing. Professionals, people with experience, but I have you as my teacher, the girl interrupted. You're the best singer I know. You taught me everything. And I'm going to sing your song, the one you wrote. Camilla felt her eyes well up. That song was part of a distant past, of a life that seemed to have belonged to someone else. A life before the illness, before the hardships, before being abandoned by the man she had loved and who had never met the daughter they created. We need your signature, Lily continued, showing her the authorization. The producer, Mrs. Beatrice, said I can't participate without it. Mrs. Irene, who had been watching the scene in silence, finally spoke up. Camilla, let the girl try. What harm can it do? And if she wins, imagine what it could mean for you both. After a long silence, Camilla nodded. She took the pen Lily offered, and with a wavering hand signed the document. "Just promise me you won't be disappointed if it doesn't work out," she asked, stroking her daughter's face. "I'm already so proud of you, regardless of any outcome." Lily hugged her mother tightly, trying to convey all the determination she felt. This wasn't just about a childhood dream or seeking fame. It was about survival, about giving her mother a chance to see the future. "I'll practice every day until the audition," she promised. "And when I win, we'll be able to pay for that new treatment the doctor talked about." Camilla didn't have the heart to tell her daughter that. According to the doctors, her case had already passed the point where new treatments would make a significant difference, that the specialists had given her only a few months, that the money, even if it came, might arrive too late. Instead, she smiled and said, "Play the song you're going to perform for me. I want to see if I still remember the words." And so, in that small apartment in the New Horizon building, mother and daughter sang together the song that spoke of hope, as if the future was still a possibility, as if time weren't slipping through their fingers like fine sand. In the days that followed, Lily dedicated herself entirely to rehearsals. She would wake before sunrise to practice, without disturbing the neighbors and her mother. In the afternoon, after caring for Camilla and doing the chores, she would pick up her guitar again. Mrs. Irene started helping more, bringing ready-made food and staying with Camilla while the girl practiced on the building's rooftop. The news of Lily's participation in the show spread quickly through the neighborhood. Soon a small support network formed. Mr. Gerald set aside the most basic medicines without charging. Mrs. Josephine ensured fresh bread every morning. Mr. Joe promised to give her a taxi ride to the station on the day of the audition. It was as if everyone was placing in that child the hopes they no longer had for themselves. On Monday, the eve of the audition, Mrs. Irene received the text with the time, 3 p.m., main studio at Walla TV. Lily barely slept that night. In her head, she repeated every chord, every verse, imagining the moment she would be in front of the cameras, in front of the whole country. What she didn't know was that on the other side of the city, in a luxurious penthouse in the Garden District, one of the show's judges was also having a restless night. Edward Norwood, a successful businessman known for his difficult temperament, was reviewing the profiles of the next day's contestants. Among hundreds of photos and descriptions, his eyes fixated on a 7-year-old girl who played the guitar. Something in her gaze stirred an unease he couldn't explain, a sense of familiarity, as if he had seen those eyes before, in another time, in another life. "Lily Martin," he read aloud, while taking another sip of whiskey. "Why does that name sound so familiar?" The morning of the audition arrived with a surprisingly blue sky, as if even the weather was conspiring in Lily's favor. She woke up before Mrs. Irene's alarm clock even rang, her heart pounding in her chest. Her first impulse was to run to the bed where Camilla slept, to tell her about the big day. But she held back when she saw that her mother was finally resting peacefully after a difficult night of pain and coughing. Silently, Lily prepared a simple coffee and set out the only outfit she considered special enough for the occasion, a light blue dress she had received last Christmas, a gift from Mrs. Irene. It wasn't new, but it was in good condition and matched the ribbon she would wear in her hair. At 1 p.m., Mr. Joe was already honking in front of the building. Camilla, who had just woken up, made a superhuman effort to appear strong and cheerful. Sitting on the edge of the bed, she adjusted the collar of her daughter's dress with trembling fingers. "You look beautiful, my star," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "You're going to shine so brightly they'll need sunglasses to look at you." Lily laughed, but her eyes were also welling up. She was afraid to leave her mother alone, even knowing that Mrs. Irene would spend the afternoon with her. "Promise you'll rest?" she asked, holding Camilla's hands in hers. "No getting up to make dinner or clean the house." "When I get back, I'll tell you everything in detail." Camilla nodded, swallowing the lump in her throat. "I'll be watching you from right here with all my heart. And remember, no matter the result, you're already a winner for having the courage to try." The farewell hug lasted longer than usual. It was as if they both sensed that this day would change their lives forever, though they couldn't imagine exactly how. In the taxi, Lily was silent, clutching her guitar case. Mr. Joe tried to distract her with funny stories about unusual passengers, but she barely listened, lost in her own thoughts. What if she forgot the lyrics? What if the guitar strings broke? What if her voice failed? "We're here, Princess," the taxi driver announced, parking in front of the station. "Want me to wait and take you back?" Lily shook her head. She didn't know how long the audition would take, and she didn't want Mr. Joe to lose hours of work. "Mrs. Irene said she'll pick me up later," she explained, getting out of the car with the guitar on her back, looking even smaller in front of the imposing Wooler TV building. "Well, good luck," he wished. "We'll all be rooting for you." The line of contestants wrapped around the block. Entire families accompanied the participants, many with musical instruments, others in elaborate costumes. For the first time, Lily felt intimidated. There, alone amidst so many seemingly prepared competitors, her dream suddenly felt distant and naive. A production assistant walked down the line, checking documents and handing out numbers. When she reached Lily, she consulted her clipboard with a surprised expression. "You're Lily Martin, the 7-year-old, she asked, looking around. "Where are your parents?" "My mother is sick, she couldn't come," the girl replied, holding out the authorization signed by Camilla. "But I have her permission here." The assistant examined the document, still hesitant. "We don't usually allow minors to be alone during the process, but—" She paused, looking at the child with the determined gaze. "Beatrice left special instructions for your case. Come with me. You'll enter through a different access." Lily followed. The woman, feeling the envious glares of the other contestants who would continue to wait under the sun. Inside the studio, the cold air conditioning made her shiver. She had never been in such a large, sophisticated place. Lights everywhere, cameras, wires, people running back and forth with headphones and clipboards. She was led to a waiting room where 10 other contestants were already waiting. They were the production's highlights, people whose stories or talents had caught Beatrice's special attention. They would be the first to perform and would have a little more time in front of the judges. "You wait here until you're called," the assistant instructed. "There's water and snacks on that table. If you need to use the restroom, ask someone from the crew to accompany you." After the assistant left, Lily chose a quiet corner of the room and sat on the floor, hugging her guitar. The other contestants chatted excitedly, sharing experiences and talking about their musical careers. There was a young man who already played in Zydeco bars, an elderly woman who had sung in her church choir for decades, a dance group that performed at parties. All adults, all with some experience. "And you, little one? What are you going to perform?" asked a middle-aged man carrying a harmonica. "A song my mom wrote," Lily answered shyly. "How cute," said a woman in a sparkling dress. "I bet you'll charm the judges just with your cuteness." Lily forced a smile but felt belittled by the comment. She didn't want to be just cute or evoke pity. She wanted to be taken seriously, for them to hear her music, her story. She wanted that prize more than anyone else there. Meanwhile, in the judges' room, Edward Norwood was reviewing the day's contestant files. At 42, he was considered one of the most successful businessmen in the South. The owner of a record label and several entertainment ventures, he had built his empire from scratch and was known for his business acumen and difficult temperament. To his employees, he was the wolf of the Garden District, ruthless in negotiations, demanding to the point of exhaustion. Few people knew another side of Edward, the man who hadn't slept properly in years, tormented by past choices, the anonymous philanthropist who funded social programs without ever appearing in photos, the collector of antique guitars, who occasionally played alone in his penthouse, melodies from a distant time. "We have 10 special contestants today," Beatrice announced, entering the room with fresh coffee. "I asked for them to go first because I think they're worth the extra attention." Edward took the cup she offered and took a sip without taking his eyes off the files. "There's a child on the list," he observed, stopping at one particular photo. "Lily Martin, 7 years old. We're not on a talent show from the 80s. This is exploitation." Beatrice rolled her eyes, already used to Edward's criticisms. "Wait until you hear her before you judge. I have a feeling about this girl, and her story is moving. Single mother, sick, precarious financial situation." "Spare me the emotional appeal," Edward cut in, although something in Lily's file continued to bother him. "I'll judge by talent, not by a sad story." The other 2 judges arrived shortly after. Julianne Costa, a nationally known pop singer, and Richard Menzies, a music producer responsible for discovering some of the biggest hits in American music over the last decade. They formed a trio both feared and respected in the artistic world. At 3 p.m. sharp, the taping began. With each performance, the studio audience reacted with applause or boos, influencing the atmosphere. The judges alternated between technical comments and provocations, creating tense moments that brought in good ratings. In the makeshift dressing room, Lily tried to control her nervousness. With each contestant called, her heart raced. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, a producer entered the room. "Lily Martin, you're next. Follow me for prep." The girl stood up, her legs wobbly, and followed the woman. In the hallway, she received quick instructions: where to stand, how to position herself for the cameras, how much time she would have to perform. A sound technician clipped a small microphone to her dress, while another checked her guitar. "Don't be nervous," the producer advised, noticing the tremor in her small hands. "Just imagine you're singing for your mother, like you do at home." Lily nodded, taking a deep breath. Suddenly, the lights dimmed, and she heard the host announce, "And now a very special participant. At just 7 years old, she comes from a humble neighborhood in New Orleans to show that talent has no age. Please give a warm welcome to Lily Martin." Applause filled the studio as she walked to the center of the stage. The bright lights momentarily blinded her, making it impossible to see the expressions of the judges or the audience. She sat on the stool provided for her, adjusted the guitar on her lap, still too big for her size, and closed her eyes for a moment. She thought of her mother. "This is for you," she whispered to herself. Silence fell over the studio. Lily placed her fingers on the strings and began to strum softly, creating a melodious introduction. And then her voice filled the space. "Through the grey clouds I see a ray of sun, even when the storm seems to have no end." It was a simple but profound melody, a song about persistence, about finding beauty even in the darkest moments, about a love that transcended difficulties. Camilla had composed it years ago during a difficult phase of her life. Edward, who had been bored with the previous performances, sat up straight in his chair as soon as the first chord sounded. There was something about that melody, something familiar, painfully familiar, and the girl's voice, though childish, carried an emotion that few adults could convey. As the song progressed, a look of shock began to form on his face. His hands gripped the arms of his chair tightly, his knuckles turning white. Long-suppressed memories flooded his mind like a torrent. A young singer in a modest New Orleans bar 15 years ago, she in a simple dress and a worn guitar, enchanting the small audience with her own compositions. He, a recent business school graduate still building his empire, captivated not only by the music but by those eyes, the same eyes that were now staring at him from the stage. Camilla. The name he had struggled to forget for all these years, the woman he had abandoned when she needed him most, when his career was starting to take off and a serious relationship seemed like an obstacle. The person who frequently visited his nightmares in the rare moments he managed to sleep. And now before him, a child who bore the same features, singing the same song Camilla had composed when they were together. "It can't be," he muttered, feeling cold sweat run down his forehead. Julianne, sitting next to him, noticed the change in his behavior. "Are you okay?" she whispered. "You look like you've seen a ghost." Edward didn't answer. He couldn't take his eyes off Lily, whose voice now reached the chorus with a surprising intensity for someone so small. "And even when the sky falls, I'll find the strength to go on, because your love guides me, like a shining star." It was too much. Decades of repressed guilt, of unanswered questions, of a longing he had never admitted to feeling. It all exploded inside him like a bomb. "Stop singing," he shouted, standing up abruptly. The entire studio froze. The music stopped mid-note. Lily looked at him with wide eyes full of fear and confusion. The cameras kept rolling, capturing every second of that unexpected moment. Richard and Julianne looked at each other, stunned. In all the previous seasons, Edward had always maintained his composure, even in the face of the worst performances. His coldness was legendary. "Edward, what's going on?" Richard asked, trying to control the situation. But Edward was already striding off the stage, ignoring the calls from the production team and the shocked murmurs of the audience. As he passed Lily, their eyes met for an instant. It was as if they both felt an inexplicable connection, a recognition that transcended reason. On stage, Lily remained static, the guitar still on her lap, tears beginning to form in the corners of her eyes. The abrupt rejection was something she was not prepared for. Her entire plan, all her hope of helping her mother, seemed to be crumbling in that instant. Beatrice rushed onto the stage, trying to salvage the situation. "We're going to take a break from taping," she announced to the audience with a forced smile. "Our judges need a moment. Please remain in your seats." Then she approached Lily, who still hadn't moved. "Don't worry, dear," she said in a low voice, for her ears only. "This has nothing to do with your performance. Edward sometimes has episodes. You were wonderful." But Lily barely heard her. In her head, she replayed the moment he yelled, the expression on that man's face. It wasn't anger she had seen, but something deeper, more disturbing. Fear, perhaps, or recognition. Backstage, Edward locked himself in his dressing room, ignoring the insistent knocking on the door. With trembling hands, he opened a bottle of whiskey and poured himself a generous dose. He needed to calm down, to think rationally. The coincidence was too great. The music, the features, the girl's age. Everything pointed to a conclusion he was not prepared to face. 15 years ago, he had ended his relationship with Camilla abruptly and cruelly. He had been a coward, he admitted now. He hadn't given explanations, hadn't allowed her to speak. He had simply walked out of her life, focused on building a career that now seemed strangely empty, despite all the success. He had never heard from her again. He had tried to find her once, years later, consumed by remorse, but she had disappeared from the New Orleans music scene. No one knew where she had gone. And he eventually had given up looking, convincing himself it was for the best, that she had probably moved on, found someone better. But now, this girl, Lily, 7 years old, the math added up perfectly. And those eyes, they were Camilla's eyes without a doubt. The same intensity, the same depth. "My God," he murmured, swallowing the rest of the drink in one gulp. "She could be my daughter." The realization hit him with the force of a train. If it was true, it meant Camilla was pregnant when he left her. That she had raised a daughter alone all these years. And now that same daughter was appearing on his show, singing to earn money because her mother was sick. The guilt was suffocating. He sat down, his head in his hands, trying to process the whirlwind of emotions that assailed him. What should he do now? Confront the truth? Look for Camilla? Try to make up for 15 years of absence? On the other side of the door, Beatrice finally gave up knocking and used her master key to get in. She found Edward sitting on the sofa, his gaze lost, an empty glass in his hand. "What the hell was that?" she asked, not hiding her irritation. "We have a full studio, a tight schedule, and you decide to have a meltdown in the middle of a taping." Edward looked up at her, and the producer took a step back, surprised by the vulnerability she saw there, something completely new in the always composed businessman. "I need to know everything about this girl," he said, his voice hoarse. "Address, family situation, the mother's full name, everything." Beatrice frowned, confused. "Why?" "Edward, what's going on?" "Just do it," he insisted, standing up. "And don't mention this to anyone, understand?" To no one. Meanwhile, Lily was being comforted by Julianne, who had remained on stage after Edward's abrupt exit. The singer, known for her charisma and sensitivity, sat next to the girl on the stool. "Don't be sad," she said, putting her arm around Lily's shoulders. "Your performance was beautiful. I've never heard such a sincere interpretation of that kind of song." Lily wiped her tears with the sleeve of her dress. "But he didn't like it," she murmured. "He yelled at me to stop." "It wasn't because of your music," Julianne assured her. "Believe me, I've worked with Edward for years. I've never seen him react like that to anything. Something in your song must have touched a personal memory of his. Sometimes art does that to people." Richard approached as well, bringing a glass of water for Lily. "Look, kid, you have a rare talent," he stated with sincerity. "And true talent always finds its way, no matter the obstacles." The kind words from the other judges comforted her a little, but Lily still felt the weight of failure. How would she go home now? How would she look her mother in the eye and say that everything had gone wrong? How would she explain it to the neighbors who had believed in her, helped her, rooted for her? Beatrice returned to the stage, looking worried. "We're stopping taping for today," she announced to the crew. "We'll reschedule for tomorrow." Then she addressed Lily specifically. "Dear, will you wait a little longer? There's someone who wants to talk to you when the studio is calmer." Lily nodded, not understanding. She had no choice anyway. Mrs. Irene was only coming to pick her up at 6, which was still almost 2 hours away. The studio gradually emptied. The other contestants were informed of the rescheduling and left, some annoyed, others curious about what had happened. The audience was dismissed, and the technical crew began to dismantle the equipment. Soon only a few people remained, including Beatrice, who took Lily to a small meeting room. "Wait here," she instructed. "I'll get you a snack." Alone in the room, Lily sat in one of the swivel chairs, making it spin slowly. She was emotionally exhausted, but a part of her still clung to a faint hope. Maybe not all was lost. Maybe there was still a chance. Outside, Edward had finally composed himself enough to make a decision. He couldn't just ignore what had happened. He needed to confirm his suspicions, and for that he would have to talk to the girl, carefully without revealing his intentions. When he entered the meeting room, he found Lily swinging her short legs that barely reached the floor, a half-eaten sandwich in her hand. She looked up when she saw him, and Edward felt that same pang in his chest. They were Camilla's eyes, no doubt about it. "Hello, Lily," he said, trying to sound casual. "May I sit down?" She nodded shyly, watching him with a mixture of fear and curiosity. "I want to apologize for what happened on stage," he began, choosing his words carefully. "It has nothing to do with your talent. In fact, you sing very well for someone your age." "Thank you," she replied, still wary. Edward took a deep breath. How to approach the subject without scaring the girl? "That song you sang. It's very beautiful. Who wrote it?" "My mom," Lily replied, a faint smile appearing on her lips. "She wrote it a long time ago, before I was born." "Your mother is a songwriter?" Edward asked, his heart racing. "She was. Now she can't play anymore because of her illness." Edward swallowed hard. Each answer further confirmed his suspicions. "What's her name?" "Camilla." "Camilla Martin." The name hit Edward like a punch to the gut, even though he was expecting it. It was her, the woman he had abandoned, the woman whose heart he had broken, the woman who probably hated him more than anyone in the world. "And your father?" he asked, trying to sound merely curious. Lily's smile vanished. "I don't have a father," she answered simply. "It's always been just me and my mom." Edward felt a mix of pain and relief. Pain for confirming that Camilla had indeed raised their daughter alone. Relief for knowing that, at least, there was no other man in the equation, someone who had taken on the role he should have played. "I see," he said, his voice slightly choked. "And how is your mother? Your file said she's sick." Lily looked down, playing with the corner of her sandwich. "She has cancer," she replied in a low voice. "She's very weak. That's why I came on the show, to try to win the prize and pay for the expensive medicine she needs." Edward felt as if all the air had been sucked out of the room. Cancer. The word echoed in his mind like a sentence. Camilla, the vibrant, full-of-life woman he had known, was sick, maybe dying, while her daughter, probably their daughter, was fighting alone to save her. "I'm so sorry," he managed to say, fighting the emotion that threatened to overwhelm him. "I'm truly sorry." For a moment they sat in silence. Lily finished her sandwich, oblivious to the turmoil of emotions inside the man in front of her. Edward, for his part, tried to process everything, to plan his next steps. "Lily," he said finally, "I want to help you and your mother." She looked up, surprised. "Even after you yelled at me on stage?" Edward smiled sadly, especially because of that. "Your performance. It moved me in a way it hasn't in a long time. And I think you deserve a second chance." The girl's face lit up. "You mean I can come back tomorrow and sing again?" "Better than that," Edward replied. "So I'm going to make sure you go straight to the semi-finals of the show. No more preliminary auditions." Lily's eyes widened, barely believing what she was hearing. "Really? But isn't that against the rules?" "I make the rules," he said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "I'm one of the owners of the show." Lily's joy was contagious. She smiled, a genuine, wide smile that made Edward feel a pang of pride. Pride in a daughter he didn't even know was. Thank you, sir," she exclaimed. "My mom will be so happy when she finds out." "Edward," he corrected her. "You can call me Edward." At that moment, Beatrice entered the room, accompanied by a grey-haired lady. "Lily, your neighbour is here to pick you up," she announced. Mrs. Irene approached, looking suspiciously at Edward. She had surely heard about the incident on stage. "Are you all right, child?" she asked, hugging Lily protectively. "I heard there was a problem with the taping." "Everything's fine now," Lily replied excitedly. "Mr. Edward said I'm going straight to the semi-finals. Isn't that amazing, Mrs. Irene?" The lady looked surprised at the businessman, who stood up and politely extended his hand. "Edward Norwood," he introduced himself. "Lily has a rare talent. It would be a waste not to give her a real chance on the show." Mrs. Irene shook his hand, still suspicious, but grateful for the opportunity offered to the girl she considered almost a granddaughter. "Well, that's wonderful news," she said. "Camilla will be very pleased." Upon hearing Camilla's name, Edward couldn't hide a reaction. Mrs. Irene noticed, frowning slightly. "Do you two know each other?" she asked perceptively. "No," he replied too quickly. "I just heard Lily talk about her mother." The lady didn't seem convinced, but didn't press the issue. There was something about this rich and powerful man that bothered her, a familiarity she couldn't immediately place. "Let's go, Lily," she said. "Your mother is waiting to hear how it went." The girl picked up her guitar and said goodbye to Edward with a radiant smile. "See you at the semi-finals, Mr. Edward." "See you then," he replied, a lump forming in his throat. "And Lily, tell your mother that you were incredible today." When the two left, Edward remained in the meeting room for a long time, absorbing everything he had discovered. He needed a plan. First, definitively confirm paternity. A DNA test would be necessary. Then find a way to help Camilla without immediately revealing who he was. She would probably reject him if she knew. And rightfully so. Beatrice returned, finding him still lost in thought. "Did you get the information you wanted?" she asked. Edward nodded slowly. "I need a favor," he said. "A big, discreet favor. I'm listening. I want you to find out everything about Camilla Martin's health status, which hospital is treating her, which doctor, what the exact prognosis is. I want to know what treatment she's receiving, what she should be receiving and can't afford. Everything, Beatrice. And I want it by yesterday." The producer watched him intently, realizing that something profound was happening. "And may I ask why?" Edward hesitated. He trusted Beatrice, but the fewer people who knew, the better. "Let's just say I have an old debt to pay," he finally replied. "A debt that has been accruing interest for 15 years. That same night, while Lily excitedly told Camilla about her miraculous qualification for the semi-finals, Edward was in his penthouse, looking out at the illuminated city through the panoramic window. In his hands, an old photo yellowed by time, he and Camilla embracing, smiling, in front of a bar where she had performed. They were young, in love, full of dreams. He had thrown it all away in the name of ambition. Now fate was giving him a second chance, a chance to do the right thing, even if it was late, a chance to meet the daughter he never knew he had, a chance to save the woman who he now realized he had never truly forgotten. The clock struck nearly midnight when his phone rang. It was Beatrice. "I have the information you requested," she said without preamble. "And Edward, it's not good. Camilla Martin is in the final stage. According to her doctors, without an experimental treatment that's only available in Houston, she has a few months." Edward closed his eyes, feeling a physical pain in his chest. "How much does this treatment cost?" "A lot. We're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars." "Arrange it," he ordered, without hesitation. "Tomorrow I want a top medical team visiting her. Use a foundation as a front. I don't want my name to appear on any of this." "Understood." "Yes," Beatrice replied, her curiosity evident in her voice. "But Edward, who is this woman to you? Why do you care so much?" Edward looked again at the photo in his hands, at Camilla's smiling face, at the life they could have built together if he hadn't been so selfish. "She is the biggest mistake of my life," he replied simply. "And maybe my last chance at redemption." He hung up the phone and stayed awake for the rest of the night, planning, thinking, remembering. In the small apartment in the Bywater, a mother and daughter slept in each other's arms, unaware that their lives were about to change forever, thanks to a song that had brought 15 long years of buried secrets to light. The dawn in the bywater brought a golden light that spilled through the cracks in the windows of apartment 407. Lily woke before Camilla, as had become common in recent months. Silently, she prepared the chamomile tea her mother drank every morning to calm a stomach sensitive from medication. The gentle aroma filled the small space, mingling with the smell of the medicines piled on the makeshift table. The news that Lily had gone straight to the semi-finals of Stars of Tomorrow had spread quickly through the building. Mrs. Irene had made sure to tell all the neighbors, creating a wave of enthusiasm and hope. Even Mr. Anthony from the corner store, who had always been reserved about the family's debts, offered a special discount on that week's groceries as a form of support. "My little star," Camilla murmured, waking slowly. Her eyes, though tired, shone with pride. "I still can't believe you charmed that tough businessman. Mrs. Irene said he's never done anything like that before." Lily smiled, handing the cup of tea to her mother. "He liked your song," she replied simply. "He said I have a rare talent." What the girl didn't mention was the strange feeling she'd had when talking to Edward. The way he looked at her, intensely, almost with pain. The questions about her mother, his unusual interest in the details of their lives. There was something more there, something her childish intuition picked up on but couldn't fully decipher. "The semi-finals are in 2 weeks," Lily continued. "I'm going to practice a lot, Mum. I'm going to win that prize, you'll see." Camilla stroked her daughter's face, feeling a mix of pride and worry. She didn't want Lily to pin all her hopes on this competition. Life had already taught her that dreams rarely came true as planned. "You're already a winner to me," she said, trying to sit up in bed but pulling back with a grimace of pain. Lily rushed to help her, arranging the pillows behind her back. "Are you okay, Mom? Do you want me to call Mrs. Irene?" "No need, it's just fatigue," Camilla lied, forcing a smile. "It must be the weather changing." "It'll pass," but Lily knew that expression. The pain was getting worse, and the medicines weren't having the same effect. The urgency to win the show, to get the money for the treatment in Houston, grew with each passing day. The doorbell rang, interrupting her thoughts. It was too early for visitors, especially on a Saturday. Lily ran to answer, finding a man in a white coat in the hallway. "Good morning," he said with a gentle smile. "I'm Dr. Maurice Wallace. I'm looking for Mrs. Camilla Martin." Lily looked at him, confused. "My mother is resting." "Are you from the public clinic?" The doctor adjusted his thin-framed glasses, consulting a clipboard. "Actually, I represent the Hope Institute, a foundation that offers specialized treatments for patients with conditions like your mother's. Could we talk for a moment?" The girl hesitated, remembering Camilla's warnings about not letting strangers in. At that moment, Mrs. Irene appeared in the hallway, drawn by the conversation. "Is there a problem, Lily?" she asked, approaching suspiciously. After a quick explanation, the neighbor decided to accompany the doctor into the apartment to ensure everything was in order. Dr. Wallace explained that the Hope Institute selected specific cases to offer advanced, free treatments as part of a philanthropic program. "We received Mrs. Martin's medical file through the Unified Health System," he explained, conveniently omitting that such information would normally be confidential, and that the real source had been Beatrice following Edward's orders. "Her case meets the criteria for our program." Camilla, now more awake, listened with a mixture of hope and disbelief. "This sounds too good to be true," she commented, her voice laced with suspicion. "Why would I be selected? There are so many sick people in this city." Dr. Wallace smiled understandingly. "The Institute works with specific cases where treatment can have significant results. Besides," he added, glancing discreetly at Lily, "we prioritize families with dependent children." The explanation seemed plausible, but Mrs. Irene, who had accompanied Camilla on several frustrating appointments, was still not convinced. "And who funds this institute?" she asked directly. "What's the interest behind all this?" "We're funded by private donors who prefer to remain anonymous," the doctor replied, maintaining his composure. "People who have been successful in life and wish to give back to society." After more explanations and the presentation of official documents, Camilla finally agreed to a preliminary evaluation. Right there in the small apartment, Dr. Wallace performed a basic exam, asked detailed questions about her medical history, and noted all the information on his clipboard. "I'll need more complete tests," he concluded. "Tomorrow we'll send an ambulance to take you to our clinic. There we'll perform all the necessary procedures to determine the best course of treatment. When the doctor left, leaving behind explanatory brochures and authorization forms, Camilla, Lily, and Mrs. Irene looked at each other, still processing what had happened. "Do you think it's real?" Camilla asked, rereading the colorful brochures that promised cutting-edge treatments. "It seemed legitimate," Mrs. Irene replied, though her expression still showed suspicion. "But I'm going to research this so-called institute before you get into any ambulance." Lily remained quiet, a suspicion growing in her mind. The doctor's visit had occurred right after her participation in the talent show, right after her conversation with Edward Norwood. Was it a coincidence? On the other side of town, Edward anxiously awaited Dr. Wallace's report. He had hired the doctor personally, choosing him for his discretion and professional excellence. The Hope Institute was real, a foundation Edward had funded for years, although few people knew of his involvement. It usually supported research and treatments for children, but now it would serve a much more personal purpose. "How is she?" he asked as soon as the doctor entered his office in the Garden District penthouse. Dr. Wallace sighed, sitting in the chair opposite the imposing desk. "I won't lie, Mr. Norwood. The situation is serious. The cancer is advanced, affecting multiple organs. The conventional treatments she received through the public system were inadequate and late." Edward closed his eyes for a moment, absorbing the impact of those words. The guilt that was already eating at him grew even more intense. "But there is hope," the doctor continued. "The new immunotherapies being tested in Houston could make a difference. And there's a clinic in Germany with an experimental protocol that has shown promising results in similar cases." "I want the best," Edward declared without hesitation. "No matter the cost. If we need to take her abroad, we'll do it." Dr. Wallace observed him with curiosity. Edward Norwood was known for his coldness in business, for calculated decisions based on numbers, not emotions. "May I ask why this specific case is so important to you?" he inquired carefully. Edward stood up, walking to the window that offered a panoramic view of New Orleans. For a long moment he just contemplated the city where it all began, where he had met Camilla, where he had abandoned the possibility of a family for ambition. "Let's just say I'm trying to right a wrong," he finally replied. "A wrong that cost innocent people far too much." The doctor nodded, understanding that he would get no further explanation. "We'll start tomorrow," he said, standing up. "I'll bring Camilla to the private clinic. We'll run the full tests and define the treatment plan. If all goes well, in a week, we could have preliminary results on how her body responds to the new medication." When the doctor left, Edward remained at the window, observing the city sprawling below, so unequal, so unjust. He thought of Camilla, living in a small apartment in the Bywater, fighting a devastating disease while he enjoyed all the luxury money could buy. He thought of Lily, that brave child who got on stages to sing, trying to save her mother when it should have been his responsibility. "It's not too late," he murmured to himself, like a mantra. "I can still fix this." That night he couldn't sleep. Tossing and turning in the king-size bed of his master bedroom, Edward felt suffocated by the ghosts of the past. He got up, went to his office, and opened the drawer where he kept memories he rarely visited. Among old documents and photographs, he found a small object wrapped in velvet, an engagement ring he had bought for Camilla but never had the courage to offer. Back then, marriage seemed like a hindrance to his ascending career. Now the ring represented all the wrong choices, all the paths not taken. The next morning, as promised, a private ambulance arrived at the New Horizon building. Curious neighbors watched from their windows as professional paramedics helped Camilla into the vehicle. Mrs. Irene, who had spent the night researching the Hope Institute and confirming its legitimacy, would accompany Camilla along with Lily. "It's like a 5-star hotel, but for sick people," Mrs. Irene whispered to Lily when they arrived at the private clinic in the uptown area. The place was impressive. Well-kept gardens, waiting rooms with comfortable armchairs, state-of-the-art equipment, attentive doctors and nurses. Camilla was settled in a private room with a view of the garden. For the first time in months, she seemed comfortable, without the constant expression of pain that had marked her face. "This must be very expensive," she commented, as a nurse adjusted the IV in her arm. "I don't understand why they chose me." "Maybe it's your lucky day, Mom," Lily replied, sitting on the edge of the bed. "Or maybe someone up there is looking out for us." What none of them knew was that on the upper floor of the clinic, Edward was watching everything through security cameras. He didn't have the courage to reveal himself yet, but he needed to follow every step of the treatment to ensure Camilla received the best possible care. Seeing her again, even through a monitor, was a shock. 15 years had passed, but he would still recognize that face anywhere. The illness had transformed her. She was much thinner, her hair sparser, her skin pale. But her eyes, the eyes Lily had inherited, were still the same, intense and deep. "Mr. Norwood," Dr. Wallace called, entering the monitoring room, "the first test results are ready. I'd like to discuss them with you." In the days that followed, a routine was established. Camilla underwent treatments during the day, while Lily alternated between staying at the clinic and going home with Mrs. Irene to get clothes or take care of pending matters. At night, the girl practiced her music in the clinic's garden, perfecting every note for the upcoming show semifinals. It was during one of these nightly practice sessions that Edward finally worked up the courage for a more direct approach. He went down to the garden and found Lily sitting on a stone bench, her guitar on her lap, gently strumming the same song that had made him recognize her. "It's sounding even better," he commented, approaching carefully so as not to startle her. Lily looked up, surprised to see the show's judge there. "Mr. Edward, what are you doing here?" He sat at a respectful distance, trying to seem casual. "I'm one of the patrons of this clinic," he explained, which wasn't exactly a lie. "I heard your mother was being treated here and came to see if you are receiving all the necessary assistance." The girl watched him with those perceptive eyes, as if trying to read beyond his words. "It was you, wasn't it?" she asked directly. "The one who sent the doctor to our house, the one paying for my mother's treatment." Edward was taken aback by the child's sharp perception. For a moment he considered denying it, maintaining the Hope Institute's facade. But something in Lily's gaze demanded honesty. "Yes," he finally admitted. "But it's important that your mother doesn't know, at least for now." "Why?" Lily insisted. "Why do you care so much about us? You barely know us." The question was exactly the one he had feared. How could he explain to a 7-year-old child that he was possibly her father? How could he talk about his past with Camilla without revealing his abandonment, his cowardice? "Let's just say, your music touched me deeply," he replied, choosing his words carefully. "And when I learned about your mother's situation, I felt I had to help. I have the means to do so, so why not?" Lily didn't seem entirely convinced, but nodded slowly. "Thank you," she said simply. "My mother has been feeling better since she came here. Yesterday she even smiled for real, for the first time in months." Edward felt a tightness in his chest, imagining Camilla suffering for so long, when he could have helped if he had known. "I'm happy to hear that," he replied sincerely. "Are the doctors optimistic?" "They say it's too early to know, but she's stronger, she can eat better, sleep without so much pain." "That's something, isn't it?" "It's a lot," Edward confirmed. "And what about the semi-finals? Are you ready?" Lily's face lit up at the change of subject. "I'm practicing every day. I'm going to sing a new song this time, another one my mom wrote." "Can I hear a little?" Edward asked, genuinely interested. Lily hesitated for a moment, then positioned the guitar and began to play. It was a different melody from the first, softer, almost a lullaby, but with an emotional depth that seemed unlikely coming from someone so young. "My mom wrote this song when I was born," she explained between verses. "She says she sang it to me every day." Edward closed his eyes, letting the music wash over him. He imagined Camilla rocking a baby, his daughter, his family, while he built empty empires on the other side of town. The pain of the lost opportunity was almost physical. When Lily finished, he applauded softly. "It's beautiful," he said, his voice slightly choked. "I'm sure it will enchant everyone just as it did me." They sat in silence for a few moments, just watching the stars begin to appear in the night sky. "Mr. Edward," Lily said finally, "you know my mom, don't you?" "From before, I mean." The question caught him off guard. How could this child see through him with such clarity? "Why do you ask?" He countered, trying to buy time. "Because of the way you reacted when I sang. The way you asked about her. The looks you give her room when you think no one is watching." Edward swallowed hard. So she had noticed him watching from a distance. "We're very observant in my family," Lily continued with a wisdom beyond her years. My mum always says I pay attention to things other children don't even notice. After a moment of reflection, Edward decided on a half-truth. Yes, I met your mother a long time ago, he admitted. She used to sing in bars here in New Orleans when she was young. I saw her perform a few times. She was incredible. And why did you never tell her that? Why are you hiding? It's complicated, Lily. Adults sometimes make mistakes, hurt people without meaning to, or meaning to, in the heat of the moment. And then it's hard to fix things. The girl watched him thoughtfully, processing his words. My mum says it's never too late to apologize, she offered finally. She says pride is a terrible advisor. Edward couldn't help a sad smile. That sounded exactly like something Camilla would say. Your mother was always wise, he commented. Wiser than me, for sure. Just then, a nurse appeared in the garden looking for Lily. Your mother is asking for you, dear, she said gently. It's time for her dinner. Lily stood up, putting the guitar in its case. I have to go, she said to Edward. Thank you for everything. He nodded, unable to express in words all that he wanted to say. Before walking away, Lily added, I think she'd like to see you, you know? Even if it's hard at first. And with those words, she left Edward alone in the garden, contemplating the possibility of finally facing his past. The next morning, Edward was in his office at the record label when he received a call from Dr. Wallace. His heart immediately sped up. Unscheduled calls rarely brought good news. We have the results of the full tests, the doctor informed him without preamble. The situation is more complex than we initially thought. The cancer has spread to the lymphatic system. The conventional treatments available here in the US would only be palliative at this stage. Edward felt the floor disappear from under his feet. What are the alternatives? He asked, his voice tense. There's a research center in Geneva, Switzerland, developing an experimental treatment for cases like hers. The preliminary results are promising, with remission rates of up to 60% in patients in advanced stages. How much time do we have? If we want the treatment to have any significant chance of success, we should start as soon as possible. We're talking weeks, not months. Make the arrangements, Edward ordered without hesitation. Contact the clinic in Geneva, book a medical jet, organize everything. I want a full team accompanying her. There's a problem, the doctor noted. The patient will need to consent to the treatment abroad, and she's been asking questions. She's suspicious of the Institute's sudden generosity. At some point, we'll have to reveal who's behind all this. Edward closed his eyes, understanding that the moment to face Camilla was approaching faster than he had expected. Leave that to me, he replied. Make the medical preparations. I'll take care of the rest. He hung up the phone and remained motionless for several minutes, contemplating what he was about to do. After 15 years, he would finally face the woman he had abandoned, the mother of his probable daughter, the person who had the most reason to hate him in the world. Meanwhile, in the clinic room, Camilla was visited by Beatrice, the producer of Stars of Tomorrow. The visit had been Edward's idea, a way to prepare the ground before his own appearance. Your daughter is truly extraordinary, Beatrice was saying, sitting in the armchair beside the bed. We rarely see someone so young with so much natural talent. Camilla smiled, pride evident on her face. She takes after her father, she said without thinking, and immediately seemed to regret the mention. Beatrice, who had been instructed by Edward to discreetly gather information, seized the opportunity. Is her father a musician too? Camilla looked away, unnecessarily adjusting the sheet over her legs. He was. I mean, I don't know if he still is. We lost touch before Lily was born. He doesn't know about his daughter? Beatrice asked, trying to sound merely curious, not invasive. No, Camilla replied after a moment's hesitation. It was my choice at the time. He was following a different path, building his career. A baby would have been inconvenient. The bitterness in Camilla's voice was palpable even after so many years. And you never considered looking for him later? For Lily to meet her father? Camilla sighed, a distant look in her eyes. In the early years, I thought about it a few times, especially when things got financially difficult. But pride is a terrible advisor, she smiled sadly, repeating her own mantra. Then life went on. We built our own family, Lily and I. Edward probably doesn't even remember me at this point. Beatrice almost choked when she heard the name, but maintained her composure. Edward? She repeated cautiously. Edward Norwood, Camilla confirmed, not realizing the impact of the revelation. Ironically, the same one who yelled at Lily to stop singing on the show. It's funny how life comes full circle, isn't it? At that moment, Lily entered the room, interrupting the conversation. She was accompanied by Dr. Wallace, who was bringing the results of new tests. Beatrice said a polite goodbye, promising to return another day. As soon as she left the clinic, she called Edward. "You knew all along, didn't you?" she asked, without beating around the bush. "You knew she was the mother of your child." On the other end of the line, Edward took a deep breath. "I suspected," he admitted. "I was sure when I saw Lily on stage. She has Camilla's eyes, but the shape of her face, it's identical to mine as a child." "She just confirmed you're the father," Beatrice informed him. "And from what I gather, you never knew about the pregnancy. Camilla chose not to tell you." Edward felt a confusing mix of emotions: relief at confirming what he already suspected, pain at knowing Camilla had faced everything alone, anger at being deprived of the chance to know his daughter from the beginning. "I'm going to see her today," he decided. "I can't put it off any longer. Dr. Wallace said time is of the essence if we want to try the treatment in Switzerland. Do you want me to go with you?" Beatrice offered, genuinely concerned. "No, this is something I have to do alone." That afternoon, Edward cancelled all his meetings and drove to the clinic, his heart beating so hard it felt like it wanted to escape his chest. On the way, he stopped at a flower shop and personally chose a bouquet of lilies, Camilla's favorite flowers, at least back when he knew her. When he arrived at the clinic, he was informed that Camilla was resting in the inner garden, enjoying the mild late afternoon sun. Lily had gone out with Mrs. Irene to get some things from home, which provided the perfect opportunity for a private meeting. Edward found her sitting in a wheelchair near a fountain, a book open on her lap, her face turned toward the sun. For a moment he just watched her from a distance, gathering courage. Even weakened by the disease, there was a dignity, a strength in her posture that had always impressed him. Finally, he approached, his steps slow, the bouquet of lilies in his slightly trembling hands. "Hello, Camilla," he said softly. She turned slowly, her eyes widening in recognition and shock. "Edward," she murmured, as if seeing a ghost. They stood in silence for a long moment, 15 years of unsaid words hanging between them like an invisible wall. "What are you doing here?" she finally asked, her voice betraying her agitation. Edward held out the bouquet, an almost pathetic gesture given the magnitude of the moment. "I came to see you, to know how you are." Camilla made no move to take the flowers, just looked at them and then back at Edward's face. "How did you know I was here?" "How did you know I was sick?" He took a deep breath, realizing there was no room for half-truths or evasions. "It was because of Lily," he replied. "When I saw her on the show, when I heard her sing your song, I knew immediately." Camilla's eyes filled with tears, a mix of fear and anger forming on her face. "So it was you," she concluded. "The Hope Institute, the doctors, the treatment. All of this was you." Edward nodded, placing the flowers on a nearby bench. "After I saw her on the show, I hired private investigators. I found out about your illness, about your financial situation. I couldn't stand by, Camilla. Not when I could help." "Help," she repeated bitterly. 15 years later, you decide to help. "I know I don't deserve your forgiveness," he said, sitting on a bench in front of her. "I know what I did is unforgivable. I abandoned you when you needed me most. I was selfish. I put my career above everything." "It's not me you owe an explanation to," Camilla replied firmly. "It's your daughter. The child who grew up without a father, who never received a birthday phone call, who had to sing on the streets to try to help her sick mother." The words hit Edward like precise arrows, each one finding its target. "You never told me about her," he observed, not as an accusation, but as a statement. Camilla gave a sad smile. "And what would you have done, Edward? Would you have abandoned your grand plans to help raise a baby? Would you have traded your career for sleepless nights and changing diapers? You made it very clear what your priorities were when you left." Edward had no answers to those questions. He didn't know what he would have done 15 years ago, but he knew what he wanted to do now. "Camilla, I know it's a lot to ask, but I need your permission. The doctors have found an experimental treatment in Switzerland that could help your case. I want to take you there with Lily, to give you a chance." She looked at him intensely as if trying to decipher his true intentions. Why? Why now? Is it guilt, remorse, or do you just want to buy your absolution? Maybe a little of all of that, he admitted honestly. But mostly, I want to meet my daughter. I want a chance to be part of her life. And for that, I need you to be well. Camilla closed her eyes for a moment, absorbing the impact of those words. When she reopened them, there was a renewed determination there. I'm not doing this for you, she said clearly. I'm doing it for Lily. She deserves a chance to have a father, even a late one. And she deserves to have her mother for longer. Edward nodded, understanding perfectly. That's all I ask, he replied. Her chance. At that moment they heard voices approaching. Lily and Mrs. Irene were returning from the apartment. The girl ran through the garden when she saw Edward sitting near her mother. Mr. Edward, what a surprise, she exclaimed, hugging her guitar to her chest. Did you come to hear my new song? Edward and Camilla exchanged a meaningful look, understanding that there was still much to be said, many truths to be revealed. But not at that moment. Actually, Edward replied, forcing a smile, I came to talk to your mother about a special treatment, one that can help her get better. Lily's eyes shone with hope. Really? And did she accept? Camilla smiled softly, reaching out to touch her daughter's face. Yes, my love. We're going to try this new treatment, and it seems it will be a great adventure. We'll have to travel to another country. Another country? Lily repeated, dumbfounded. Which one? Switzerland, Edward replied. It's in Europe. It's a beautiful place with snow-capped mountains and lakes so blue they look painted. And can I bring my guitar? The girl asked, worried. Of course, he assured her, smiling genuinely now. Actually, I was thinking, the show's semi-finals are in a few days. I think we should postpone the trip until after your performance. What do you think? Lily looked at her mother, uncertain. But what if the treatment can't wait? The doctors say a few days won't make a difference, Edward lied, knowing that every day was precious. But he understood the importance of that moment for Lily, the opportunity to show her talent to the world. And then when you win the prize, we can use the money to buy a new guitar in Geneva. They say the best instruments in the world are made there. The excitement on Lily's face was contagious. Even Camilla, despite all the emotional turmoil of her reunion with Edward, couldn't help but smile at her daughter's enthusiasm. Let's take it one step at a time, she advised, stroking the girl's hair. First the semi-finals, then we'll think about the rest. Mrs. Irene, who had watched the entire interaction with sharp eyes, finally approached. So you're the mysterious benefactor, she said, looking directly at Edward. I suspected from the beginning there was more to this story. Edward politely extended his hand. Edward Norwood, thank you for everything you've done for Camilla and Lily over the years. The lady shook his hand with surprising firmness. I did what any decent person would do, she replied with a hint of implicit criticism. I hope your intentions are genuine, Mr. Norwood. These two have suffered enough. The warning was clear, and Edward received it with humility. I intend to spend the rest of my life proving they are, he assured her. That night, after Lily had fallen asleep on a makeshift sofa bed in the hospital room, Camilla and Edward talked for hours. There were 15 years of unshared stories, unanswered questions, repressed feelings that finally found an outlet. When did you know you were pregnant? He asked, sitting in the armchair beside the bed. 3 weeks after you left, Camilla replied, her voice soft so as not to wake Lily. I tried to call you, but you had changed your number. I went to your apartment, but the doorman said you had moved, leaving no forwarding address. Edward bowed his head, ashamed of the cowardice of his past actions. I was running away, he admitted. Not from you specifically, but from feelings that scared me, from commitment, from the idea of building something that could distract me from the success I so desperately sought. And was it worth it? She asked without resentment, just genuine curiosity. All this fortune, this empire you've built, did it bring you the happiness you expected? Edward looked around the luxurious hospital room, at the expensive equipment, at the flowers he had sent, at the imported medicines, symbols of the power he had accumulated. Then he looked at Lily sleeping peacefully, at the guitar leaning against the wall, at the evident love between mother and daughter. Not for a second. He replied with absolute sincerity. Camilla nodded, as if she already knew the answer. "It's ironic," she commented. "All these years I fought so hard to give Lily everything I could. I worked 2-3 jobs at the same time. I sang in bars on weekends, gave music lessons, did whatever was necessary. And even in the toughest times, when the rent was late or when there wasn't enough money for medicine, I never regretted the choice to have her. She was the best thing that ever happened to my life." Edward felt his eyes well up, imagining all the moments he had missed, all the firsts he had never witnessed. The first smile, the first word, the first steps. "She's incredible," he said, looking at the sleeping girl. "So strong, so determined." "So much like you. And like you too," Camilla added with a melancholic smile. "She has your stubbornness, your intensity, and definitely your musical talent." They were silent for a few moments, each lost in their own thoughts. "When do you plan to tell her?" Camilla finally asked. Edward sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I don't know. Part of me wants her to know immediately, for us to have a chance to build a relationship. But another part fears it's too soon, that she'll reject me. And rightfully so." "Lily has a huge heart," Camilla replied. "Bigger than mine, for sure. She always asked about her father, always wanted to meet him, even when I tried to protect her from the truth." "What did you tell her when she asked?" "That her father loved us, but he had to leave. That sometimes adults make difficult decisions, and they don't always get them right. I never wanted her to grow up with anger or resentment." Edward felt a wave of gratitude and admiration for Camilla. Even after everything he had done, she had preserved his image for their daughter. "You are an extraordinary person, Camilla Martin," he said, his voice choked with emotion. "I don't deserve the consideration you've shown me all these years." She smiled, tired but serene. "I didn't do it for you. I did it for her. Every child deserves to believe they are loved by both parents, even when reality is more complicated." On the makeshift bed, Lily moved slightly, hugging her pillow tighter. Edward and Camilla watched her with tenderness. "I think we should tell her after the semi-finals," Camilla suggested. "Regardless of the result. She'll be emotionally overwhelmed until then, with the competition, with my illness." Edward agreed. "And what about the trip to Switzerland?" he asked. "The doctors think we should leave as soon as possible." "We will go," Camilla assured him. "But first, I need to see my daughter shine on that stage. It's all she's been dreaming of for the past few weeks." At that moment, as if sensing they were talking about her, Lily sleepily opened her eyes. "Mom?" she called, her voice hoarse with sleep. "Is Mr. Edward still here?" "I am, Lily," he replied, approaching the makeshift bed. "Just talking with your mother a bit about the travel preparations." The girl smiled, still half asleep. "Good that you two are getting along," she murmured, before turning over and falling back to sleep. Edward and Camilla exchanged a meaningful look, thinking how much irony and hope that innocent observation carried. Perhaps, despite all the mistakes of the past, there was still a chance for a new beginning. Perhaps it wasn't too late to build the family that should have existed from the start. With that comforting thought, Edward said goodbye to Camilla, promising to return the next day. As he drove back to his empty penthouse, he reflected on how his life had completely changed in a matter of days. From a lonely man with an empty empire, he had become an anxious father eager to meet his daughter, an ex-lover trying to repair old damages, a human being desperately fighting to save someone he had once abandoned. At the clinic, Camilla watched Lily sleep, thinking about how much her daughter deserved all the opportunities that Edward's money and name could provide. A quality education, material comfort, chances to develop her musical talent without the limitations of poverty. As much as she still felt the pain of abandonment, she couldn't deny Lily the right to know her father, to have a complete family, even if it was late. And so that night, 3 lives intertwined by fate, talent and past choices began a new chapter, a chapter of redemption, of forgiveness, of possibilities. The future was uncertain. Camilla's illness, the DNA test Edward secretly planned to confirm his paternity, Lily's reaction when she learned the truth, but for the first time in a long time there was hope. A hope as fragile as the first notes of an unfinished song, but as real as the love that united mother and daughter, and the regret that drove a father to finally do the right thing. The day of the semi-finals dawned with a flawless blue sky over New Orleans. A good omen, Lily thought, as she watched the view from the window of Camilla's clinic room. In the past few weeks, Her life had transformed in ways she could never have imagined. Her mother was receiving the best medical treatment possible. Her guitar had new strings, a gift from Edward, and a special dress for the performance was waiting in the closet, still with its tag on. "Nervous?" asked Camilla, who was watching her from the hospital bed, visibly stronger than she had been weeks ago. The intensive treatment was starting to show results. The color had returned to her cheeks. She could eat without nausea, and the episodes of pain had significantly decreased. "A little," Lily admitted, turning to her mother with a shy smile. "But it's different this time. Before I felt like everything depended on me, that I had to win to save you. Now you can just sing for the love of music," Camilla completed, extending a hand to her daughter. "As it should be," Lily approached, sitting on the edge of the bed. "Mr. Edward said he'll come get me at 4, she commented, adjusting the folds of the sheet. "He promised you could watch on TV from here." Camilla smiled, though a shadow of concern crossed her face. In recent weeks, Edward had become a constant presence in their lives. He visited the clinic daily, brought gifts for Lily, consulted with the doctors about the treatment, and organized the trip to Switzerland. He was attentive, respectful, and kept an appropriate emotional distance from Camilla, who had made it clear that forgiveness would come with time, if at all. But the crucial issue hanging over them was telling Lily the truth. They had agreed to do it after the semi-finals, regardless of the result. Camilla feared her daughter's reaction, not that she would reject Edward, but that she would feel betrayed by all the years of half-truths. "Mom?" Lily called, noticing her distraction. "Is everything okay?" Camilla pushed away her worried thoughts and smiled. "Everything's great, my love. Just thinking about how you're going to shine today." The truth was that Camilla's health, though improved, was still delicate. The doctors had been clear with Edward. The treatment in Switzerland needed to start as soon as possible to have a real chance of success. Every day was precious. But she had insisted on waiting until after Lily's performance, and Edward hadn't had the heart to deny her. At 4 o'clock sharp, Edward arrived at the clinic, impeccably dressed in a navy blue suit. He brought a small box wrapped in colorful paper, "A gift for our star," he said, handing it to Lily. The girl opened the package carefully, revealing a delicate silver bracelet with a musical note charm. "It's beautiful," she exclaimed, her eyes shining. "Can I wear it today?" "Of course," Edward replied, helping her put on the jewelry. "For good luck." Camilla watched the interaction with a mix of emotions. Seeing her daughter and her father together, even though Lily didn't yet know the truth, caused her a bittersweet pain. It was the family they could have been, that they should have been. "I brought something for you too," Edward said, turning to Camilla and handing her a small vial. "Holy water from Our Lady of Mount Carmel. I know you were always devout." Camilla took the vial, genuinely touched by the gesture. Edward remembered details from 15 years ago, things she had almost forgotten herself. "Thank you," she said simply. "We need to go," Edward announced, checking his watch. The production asked the contestants to arrive 2 hours early. "I need to get back to the clinic," he said with a forced calm. "Your mother isn't feeling very well." "But what about the results?" Lily asked, confused. "They'll be announced soon." "Beatrice will let us know," Edward assured her. "Right now your mother needs you." On the way to the clinic, Edward drove over the speed limit, constantly checking the rearview mirror to see Lily in the back seat. The girl was silent, her guitar on her lap, concern evident on her young face. "What happened to her?" she finally asked, her voice small. Edward hesitated. Dr. Wallace had been clear. Camilla had suffered a sudden crisis, with respiratory distress and intense pain. She was stable, but the episode indicated the disease was progressing faster than they had anticipated, despite the treatments. "She got very emotional with your performance," he replied, opting for a half-truth. "It made her a bit weak. The doctors are taking care of her." When they arrived at the clinic, they were met by Dr. Wallace in the lobby. The doctor had a grave expression, but forced a smile when he saw Lily. "Your mother is asking for you," he said gently. "She's anxious to hear how your performance went." "Can I see her now?" Lily asked, and of course. "She's waiting for you." As the girl headed to the room accompanied by a nurse, Dr. Wallace turned to Edward, his expression instantly changing to one of professional concern. "It was worse than we thought," he said in a low voice. "The cancer is spreading rapidly, despite the medication. We need to start the treatment in Switzerland immediately." Every hour counts now. Edward felt as if the floor had disappeared from under his feet. How much time do we have? If we leave tomorrow, there's still a good chance. If we wait another week. The doctor didn't finish the sentence, but the meaning was clear. Make the arrangements, Edward ordered. The private jet will be ready for takeoff at 10 a.m. Organize the medical team, everything necessary for her to travel comfortably. Dr. Wallace nodded, walking away to make the necessary calls. Edward remained in the hallway for a few minutes, gathering strength for what was to come. They had to tell Lily the truth. Tonight there was no more postponing. And they had to convince her to accept the immediate trip, giving up the show's final that meant so much to her. In the room, Camilla was sitting up in bed, visibly paler than in the morning, but with a radiant smile as she saw her daughter enter. Lily ran to hug her, careful not to hurt her. "Did you see, Mom? Did you see my performance?" "I saw every second, my star," Camilla replied, stroking her daughter's hair. "It was the most beautiful thing I have ever witnessed. You lit up that stage like no one else." Edward entered silently, staying near the door. Camilla looked up, meeting his gaze. A silent communication passed between them. It was time. "Lily," Camilla began, taking a deep breath. "We need to talk about something important. Something we should have told you a long time ago." The girl pulled back slightly, looking from her mother to Edward, then back to her mother. "Is it about what Mr. Edward and I talked about in the car?" she asked. Camilla cast a questioning glance at Edward, who nodded, confirming their earlier conversation. "Yes," she replied. "It's about the three of us, about our family." "Our family?" Lily repeated, confused. Camilla held her daughter's hands in hers, gathering the courage for the words that would change everything. "Remember all the times you asked me about your father? How I said he loved us but had to leave?" Lily nodded slowly, her eyes instinctively moving to Edward, who was now approaching the bed. "Edward and I knew each other many years ago," Camilla continued, her voice soft but firm. "We loved each other very much, but circumstances separated us before I knew I was pregnant with you." The silence that followed seemed to amplify the sound of the heart monitors, the air conditioning, the contained breath of everyone in the room. "Mr. Edward," Lily began, slowly processing the information, "is my father." Edward took another step forward, kneeling beside the bed to be at Lily's eye level. "Yes," he replied, his voice thick with emotion. "I am your father, Lily. A father who made the terrible mistake of not being present all these years, who didn't know you existed until I heard you sing on that stage." Lily stared at him with wide eyes, trying to associate the powerful, intimidating man she had met on the talent show with the father figure she had always imagined. "Is that why you yelled at me to stop singing?" she asked, the pieces fitting together in her childish but extraordinarily perceptive mind. "Because you recognized my mother's song?" "Exactly," Edward confirmed. "That song, it was special to us. Hearing you sing it, seeing your eyes the same as your mother's, it was as if time had turned back. I realized immediately who you were, although I needed to confirm it." Lily remained silent for long moments, looking from one to the other. Her emotions were too complex to decipher. Confusion, surprise, perhaps hurt, perhaps relief. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" she finally asked, her voice small. "We wanted to wait for the right moment," Camilla replied. "We didn't want to overwhelm you before the semi-finals, but—" She paused, searching for the right words. "Circumstances have changed. Your mother needs to travel to Switzerland immediately," Edward explained, opting for complete honesty now. "The experimental treatment that can help her can't wait any longer." "But what about the show's final?" Lily asked, looking from one to the other. "If I made it, it would be in 2 weeks." Camilla and Edward exchanged a meaningful look. "The show isn't important anymore," Edward said, firmly. "What matters now is your mother's health, and being together as a family." The word family hung in the air, laden with meaning. "Are you going to get back together?" Lily asked, with the typical innocence of a child who, despite all hardships, still dreamed of the complete family she never had. Camilla and Edward glanced at each other, caught off guard by the direct question. "It's complicated, Lily," Camilla answered carefully. "The important thing now is that Edward is your father and wants to be part of your life. The rest we'll figure out with time." Before the conversation could continue, Edward's cell phone rang. It was Beatrice. "Edward, where are you?" Lily made it to the final. The audience is going crazy. The voting was the biggest in the show's history. Edward moved away to finish the call, quickly explaining the situation to Beatrice, while Camilla and Lily continued their intimate conversation. "You're not mad at me?" Camilla asked, her voice trembling. "For not telling you about your father sooner." Lily thought for a moment before answering. "A little," she admitted, "but I understand why you did it. You always wanted to protect me." "Always," Camilla confirmed, hugging her daughter with all the strength she could muster. "And I always will." Edward returned after ending the call. "You made it to the final, Lily," he announced with a restrained smile, "in first place with the highest vote in the show's history. In any other circumstance, that news would have been a cause for euphoric celebration. Now, however, it weighed like an additional complication in an already delicate situation." "It doesn't matter," Lily said surprisingly, looking at her mother with determination. "Mom's health is more important than any show." Edward felt a wave of pride so intense it almost knocked him off balance. This child, his daughter, was demonstrating a maturity and generosity that he himself had never possessed at her age, or even as an adult for many years. "Are you sure?" Camilla asked, visibly moved. "I know how much this show means to you." "I'm sure," Lily confirmed with surprising conviction. "Besides, now that I know Mr. Edward is my father, we don't need the prize anymore, do we?" The simplicity of the childish logic brought smiles to both Camilla's and Edward's faces. "No, we don't," he confirmed. "And you can just call me Edward, or Dad if you want, when you're ready." Lily looked at him for a long moment as if weighing the significance of that word, the responsibility and privilege it carried. "I'll think about it," she finally replied, with a seriousness almost comical coming from someone so small. Edward nodded, respecting her space. "Then it's decided," he declared. "We'll leave for Switzerland tomorrow. Dr. Wallace is already arranging everything. It will be a comfortable trip, I promise." "And what will happen to our home?" Lily asked, worried about practical aspects that children would rarely consider. "With Mom's things, with my old guitar, with the neighbors. Mrs. Irene has already been informed," Edward assured her. "She will look after the apartment while we're away. And as for the important things, we can take them with us." "How long will we be there?" Lily asked, the reality of the move starting to sink in. Edward and Camilla exchanged a look. The truth was, it depended on Camilla's response to the treatment. It could be weeks, months, maybe longer. "As long as it takes," Edward replied vaguely. "The important thing is that we'll be together." The next morning, the small apartment in the Bywater was a whirlwind of activity. Mrs. Irene helped Lily pack clothes, toys, books, choosing what was essential to take to Switzerland. The old guitar, the one that had belonged to Camilla and with which Lily had learned to play, was carefully packed. "We're going to miss you, little one," Mrs. Irene said, with tears in her eyes as she hugged the girl. "But we're happy your mother will have a chance to get better, and that you've finally met your father." The news of Edward's paternity was already circulating among the closest neighbors, causing a stir and speculation. How could the powerful businessman, the wolf of the Garden District, be the absent father of a girl who grew up in such modest conditions? Opinions were divided between outrage at his past absence and admiration for his current effort to repair his mistakes. At 9 a.m., Edward's car parked in front of the New Horizon building. A small crowd of neighbors had formed to say goodbye. Mr. Gerald, the pharmacist, Mrs. Josephine from the bakery, Mr. Anthony from the corner store, Mr. Joe, the taxi driver, who had taken Lily to her audition. Everyone wanted to wish them luck, to hug the girl who in some way represented all their hopes. "We'll be rooting for you from afar." "Princess," said Mr. Joe, handing her a small package, "a souvenir from your neighborhood, so you don't forget your roots." It was a miniature of Jackson Square, a landmark that Lily always admired when they passed through downtown. At the clinic, Camilla was ready for the trip. Dr. Wallace personally supervised her preparation, ensuring she would be comfortable for the flight. An ambulance would take them to the airport, where Edward's private jet awaited. "The doctors in Geneva are already prepared to receive you," Dr. Wallace explained. "The clinic is one of the best in the world, and the experimental treatment has shown very promising results in similar cases." Edward watched everything with a mix of hope and apprehension. He had done everything in his power, mobilized resources, contacts, money. Now all that was left was to trust in science and perhaps in something beyond it. Are you ready? He asked Camilla when it was time to leave. She nodded, holding the hand of Lily, who hadn't left her side since arriving at the clinic. Ready as I'll ever be. At the airport, a surprise awaited Lily. The crew of Stars of Tomorrow, including Beatrice, Richard, and Julianne, was there for a special farewell. We couldn't let you go without a proper goodbye, Beatrice explained, hugging the girl. We brought you something, said Julianne, handing her a golden envelope. The final was supposed to be in 2 weeks, but we talked to the production and the sponsors. Lily opened the envelope and found an official certificate declaring her the honorary winner of the show. But how? She asked, confused. After they learned about your mother's situation and the urgent trip, the public rallied, Richard explained. Her special vote was organized on social media, and the result was unanimous. You are the brightest star of this season. And the prize? Lily asked, remembering the $100,000 she had so desperately wanted to save her mother. It's being transferred as we speak, Beatrice assured her, to be used as your family sees fit. Edward, who was watching the scene with contained emotion, approached. The money will be invested in a special fund for your musical future, he explained, for when we get back from Switzerland. That when, not if, carried the hope of all of them. The hope that the treatment would work, that Camilla would recover, that they could truly be a family. The farewell was brief but emotional. Promises to keep in touch, to follow the treatment from a distance, to root for Camilla's recovery. Then finally they boarded the private jet, Camilla comfortably settled on a special bed, Lily by her side, and Edward completing the trio that, despite all adversities, was finally reunited. As the aircraft took off, Lily looked out the window, watching New Orleans shrink until it became just a set of colorful dots. The city that had been her only home, the scene of struggles, dreams, tears, and finally, the reunion that had changed everything. What are you thinking about? Edward asked, sitting next to her. About how fast life changes, Lily replied with a wisdom beyond her years. 2 months ago I was singing in the rain in front of a newsstand, trying to save money for Mom's medicine. Now we're going to Switzerland. I have a father. I won a talent show. Life sometimes surprises us, Edward agreed. Not always in the way we expect, but perhaps in the way we need. Lily turned to him, studying his face with that characteristic intensity. Are you going to stay with us forever now? She asked directly. Even after Mom gets better? The question caught Edward by surprise, but he answered with absolute sincerity. Yes, Lily, forever. I lost 15 years of your life. I lost the chance to see you being born. Take your first steps, say your first words. I won't lose anything more. Whatever the future holds for us, we will face it together. Lily nodded, seemingly satisfied with the answer. She turned back to the window, now showing only the blue of the sky and a few occasional clouds. You know, she said after a few minutes of silence, I think I can call you Dad now. If you still want me to. Edward felt his heart almost burst in his chest at those simple words. Nothing would make me happier, he replied. His voice choked with emotion. In the special compartment where Camilla rested, monitored by a nurse, a soft smile formed on her lips as she heard the conversation. She closed her eyes, allowing herself for the first time in a long time to dream of a future where her small family would finally be complete. The jet continued its path eastward, toward Switzerland, carrying not just 3 people, but a universe of possibilities, of second chances, of hope. The music Lily had sung in the semi-finals echoed silently among them, a promise now made real. In the notes of this song, it will always be us two. Except that now, finally there were 3. Dear listeners, we hope the story of Lily, Camilla, and Edward has touched your hearts as much as it has touched ours. The melodies that unite families, that cross time and overcome obstacles, continue to echo long after the last chord. To follow more emotional journeys like this one, we have prepared a special playlist with equally captivating stories. Find it by clicking on the left. If this narrative stirred emotions in you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel, leave, like it, and share it with others who also appreciate stories of overcoming and reunion. And we would love to know, which moment in this story touched you the most? Was it when Lily discovered Edward was her father, when she gave up the show's final for her mother's health, or perhaps when she finally called him Dad? Let us know. in the comments. Every day we bring new stories that explore the complexities of human relationships, the challenges we face, and the strength we find in love. Don't miss our upcoming content. Your presence and your comments are what give meaning to this work. Until the next story, from heart to heart.